You recently purchased a new plant for a family member that wasn't feeling very well. When you bought the plant, it was exactly 1 foot tall. That's some important information that we're going to use in just a little bit, so I'm going to highlight it. After you gave it to your family member, they noticed the plant was growing at a pretty fast rate. So after 1 month, after they were feeling better, they decided to measure its height. They discovered it was 2 feet tall. They then decided to measure the height at the end of each month. At the end of the second month, the plant was 4 feet tall. At the end of 3 months, the plant was 8 feet tall. At this point, the plant needed to be moved outside because it was getting way too big for inside the house. So at the end of the fourth month, once it was outside, it measured 16 feet tall. And then finally, at the end of 5 months, it was a whopping 32 feet tall. So we're going to fill in this table right below with these numbers. So on months, it's talking about number of months after you bought the plant. So for 0, that would be 0 months after you bought the plant. That's talking about the moment when you bought it. So when you bought it, it was 1 foot tall. So you're going to put 1 for the height. A month after you bought it, it was 2 feet tall. After the second month, the plant was 4 feet tall. After 3 months, it was 8 feet tall. After 4 months, it was 16 feet tall. And then after 5 months, it was 32 feet tall. So the next question says, at this rate, how tall will their plant be after 8 months? So first of all, we need to figure out what's happening to the height every month. What pattern do we see? So a lot of you notice that as the month goes on, the height is doubling. You're multiplying it by 2 to get the new height. So how are we going to figure out after 8 months if we only went to 5? Well, we need to figure out months 6 and 7 also. So I'm going to zoom in on this just a little bit. Reminder that after 5 months, it was 32 feet tall. So to get from after 5 months to 6 months, we need to multiply that height by 2. So it goes from 32 to 64. And then for the next month, we're going to do 64 times 2, which is 128. And then for the next month, we're going to multiply it by 2 again, and you get 256. So after 8 months, it's 256 feet tall. So if their plant continues growing at this rate, let's think about an algebraic equation that we could use to find the height of the plant after any number of months, so we don't have to go through and figure out all the previous months as well. So to get an algebraic equation, that tells us that we're going to have some variables. So if we think about the unknown things in this problem, what's not the same in every situation, that's going to be the height and the months. So let's make height H, and let's make months M. So if we're thinking about an algebraic equation, typically you think of something like y equals x plus 1. So instead of y and x, we're just going to use h and m. H is going to be in place of y, and m is going to be in place of x. So we need to figure out an equation that is h equals something. Go ahead and pause this video and really look at those numbers, look at the months versus looking at the height, and see if you can figure out what equation would model these problems. If you're struggling with this, I'll give you a hint. The numbers 2 and m are the only ones that are involved. So a lot of you might have thought 2 times m. So if we look at 2 times m, we need to plug in our number of months to see if we get the right height. So if I plug in 0 for m, I get 2 times 0, which is 0. Well, my height's not 0, so that's not right. So 2 times m is not the right equation. Try again. If you're still struggling with it, I will tell you that an exponent is involved. So some of you might have thought, well, maybe it's m squared. So let's try that out. If I were to plug in 0 for m, I get 0 squared, which is 0 times 0. Well, that equals 0, which is not my height. So that's not right. Try again. If you're still struggling with this, instead of having it as h equals m squared, switch those numbers around and make it h equals 2 to the m. So we have h equals 2 to the m. So let's see if this works. Well, if I were to plug in 0, I'd have h equals 2 to the 0. Well, I don't know if I've ever seen that before. I don't know what that is. I don't know what 0 as an exponent means. So I'm just going to skip that, and I'm going to move on to 1. So I'm going to make it h equals 2 to the first power. Well, I know that that's 2. And hey, that works. So let's try it for the next one. Make sure it still works. So if I try it for 2 months, I have h equals 2 squared, which is 4. Well, hey, it works again. So let's try it for the next one. H equals 2 to the third. Well, 2 to the third is 2 times 2 times 2, because we're talking about exponents. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And that is what my height is for 3 months. So let's try it for 4. 2 to the fourth, I need to write this out to think about it. That's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. And that's my height after 4 months. Let's try it for 5. Let's just double check that it works. 5, 2 to the fifth. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, I just did this, and I know that that's 16. 5 16 times 2, well, I know that that's 32. So this works. If it works for everything else, I bet it works for a height of 0, or a month of 0 as well. And I will tell you that it does. 2 to the 0 power is 1. That's actually a new rule that we're about to learn. Anything to the power of 0 equals 1. It does not matter what this number is, it equals 1. That number could be 3,476 to the 0 power, and that's still going to be equal to 1. So this right here is our equation. All right, moving on to number 3. It says your family member asked you which store you bought the plant at. You told them it was Super Plants R Us, so they then go to Super Plants R Us and found out that the plant was alive for quite a few months before you bought it. The store owner said it was continuing to grow at the same rate that it is now, as before you even purchased it. So if this is actually true, how tall was the plant a month before you purchased it? And then we need to explain how you know this. Well, looking back at the growth of the plant, every month that went by, it doubled, it multiplied by 2. So if we go backwards in time, every month that we go backwards, we're just going to divide by 2. So if it was 1 foot tall when I bought it, then the month before, it's going to be 1 divided by 2, which is just 1/2. Because division is the same as a fraction. So this is 1/2 a foot tall. I know this because when we go backwards in months, we divide the height by 2. Moving on to number 4, it says how tall was the plant 2, 3, 4, and 5 months before you purchased it? And then fill in the table and write equations for each month using the base equation above in number 2. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill out this table for 2, 3, 4, and 5 months before we purchased it. We're actually going to work backwards on this because I don't know just off the top of my head what it would have been 5 months before, but I do know that the month after I bought the plant, it was 2 feet tall. And I know that the month that I bought it, it was 1 foot tall. And I just found out that the month before I bought it, it was 1/2 of a foot tall. So if we're thinking about number of months after we bought it, if we're going backwards in time, then we're going negative. So -1 month would be the month before, which would be 1/2. So every time I'm dividing by 2. So to get 2 months before I bought it, I'm going to divide by 2 again. So I'm going to take 1/2 divided by 2. When I rewrite that, because I'm dividing fractions, so I'm going to keep, change, flip, and I get 1/4. And then when I divide by 2, again, I have 1/4 divided by 2. I'm going to write it as 2/1 because I need to deal with fractions. And keep, change, flip, and I get 1/8. Go ahead and do the last 2 on your own, and then so pause the video, work them out, and then play it and continue on. So to get from 3 months before to 4 months before, I'm going to divide by 2 again. So I'm taking 1/8 divided by 2. I'm writing it as 2/1. I keep, change, flip, and I get 1/16. And then I'm going to divide by 2 again. So I have 1/16 divided by 2/1. Keep, change, flip to get 1/32 for 5 months before. So these are all the heights for the months before I bought this plant. So the second part of this problem says, write equations for each month using the base equation from number 2. So if we look back at number 2, our equation was h equals 2 to the m. So all we're going to do is for each of these spots right here, we're going to substitute in the height for h and the number of months for m, and we're just going to rewrite it. So my first equation, I'm just going to start on the left. My height was 1/32. That's equal to 2 to the m, and my m is -5. The next one I have 1/16 is equal to 2 to the -4. Then 1/8 is equal to 2 to the -3rd. 1/4 is equal to 2 to the -2nd. 1/2 is equal to 2 to the -1st. 1 is equal to 2 to the 0. And then 2 is equal to 2 to the 1st. Those are all my equations. Moving on to number 5, all that we're going to do for the first part of this is take all of the heights from number 1 and number 4 and put them into this table together. So I'm going to start filling this in. I know that my height at 5 months before I bought it was 1/32, and then 1/16, 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32. So now what you need to do is look at these numbers and really study them. Look at the months, look at the heights, look at those numbers compared to each other, look at them compared to the other ones, and see if you can find a pattern or a relationship about the heights in this table. So pause this video and think about it. So there might have been a couple different patterns that you noticed. I'm just going to list some that you might have seen. You might have noticed that all the heights are positive. You might have noticed that the negative months are fractions. And the positive months are whole numbers. You might have noticed that there's a lot of opposite numbers on here. You might have noticed that the opposite months, the heights for the opposite months are reciprocals. So by that, if you're looking at -1 and 1, because those are opposites, those heights are reciprocals, 1/2 and 2. If you take the fraction and flip it, you get the other one. Same with -2 and 2, you have 1/4 and 4, and so on. So that is something else that you might have here. So that would be the heights of the opposite months are reciprocals. And a new word that we're going to use for reciprocals is inverse. So they are inverses of each other. So now based on the equations in number 4, based on the values in table 5, what we just talked about for the second part of table 5, or question 5, what do you notice about the exponents that are negative? So now we're looking specifically at those. So pause this video, think about it, put it into words, and then play the video. So something that you might have noticed is that negative exponents create fractions In other words, another way to say this is they are the inverse, that's that new word, that buzzword, of the positive exponent. So think through what we just wrote here. Look back at these equations here from number 4. Look at the table on number 5 and really see what's happening here with the negative exponents. They're making the numbers into fractions. So now what you're going to do on number 7, you're going to do this on your own, is based on your new knowledge of negative exponents, you're going to evaluate and simplify these expressions below. One thing I want to make clear is evaluate means when you have numbers. So that's when you have numbers and you can get a number as an answer. Simplify is when you have variables. because you cannot get a specific number as an answer. So now go ahead and pause this video, work through these, and then play the video and the answers will pop up. And then that is it for this fast growing plant activity. All right, here's all the answers to all the problems on number 7. Go through, check all of these, and if you get any wrong, check back at them, see if you can figure out why and learn from that mistake. And then this will set you up and prepare you really well for the beginning of Unit 3 that we're about to start. One thing I want to point out is these numbers here are the correct answers. I just showed the work before that in case you get stuck on those problems because they're just a little bit more challenging. As always, if you struggle with any of this, if you have any questions, come talk to me, come ask me, and I will help you out.